So Nathaniel, what is drifting? Like, what is life? What is drift life?
You don't even take this seriously. So
No, I'm excited because this is the closest together we've been in like 6 days.
So we're here. Basically, guys, we haven't had to hear anything from Richard about this season. It takes a lot to even consider running a season. And then when you have all the ups and downs that come with it, I thought it'd be interesting to hear it from the perspective of a person who has to do all the work in order to be able to go out there, plus set aside all the time to do so, feel like he's picked the right people to support him for when he gets there, and then sit there and just let what happens, and you have to maintain a cool composure and you still have to be able to perform at your best. So I just thought it'd be interesting for us to hear it from this guy, just kind of how the season went, and then we'll wind it up with what he thought about the difference between the power plants we were running earlier in the season for 2 rounds and then almost a third, and then this last one, and just kind of see where we went from that. This is Richard Advani. He is the owner and driver of the HP Chasers C6. We're finally going to get to hear some stuff from him.
Hey guys, well,
all right, so tell us some of the stresses that it is just thinking about going into FD.
I'd say FD is the stress that comes with it are the stresses you don't even think of, right? Most of the time initially, for a lot of drivers that get into FD, at least for myself, I got in so quickly that I felt like I should have had more driving time before I jumped in and started competing. I thought the hardest and biggest obstacle to me doing well at FD was going to be my driving, right? And my emotions and staying calm and performing well. Little did I realize that, driving's 10% of it. What was 90% was having the car, the right engine, the right powertrain, the right suspension, and then, having all these parts that you put together in a car, figuring out a way that they can all work together in synchrony. And then on top of that, the team, the program, spares, the supplies, there was so much more that went into being a champion and being a successful driver. And there's so many pieces that you don't even think of. And, being a business owner, what I wasn't even prepared for was that it's a business, right? There has to be meetings, there has to be training, there has to be a plan set out, there has to be job descriptions. And I wasn't planning for that.
We're showing up to the track, even though you did load some things like that. There's quite a bit more online, just even that we're spending X dollars to show up, and to spend X dollars to show up and then not even be potent. We can't even impose ourselves onto the situation. That was one of the biggest things that I was worried about when we started this season, coming off of the season of last year and having those actual issues be the issue as to why the season didn't happen, right? Like we had things that took place that took precedence over actually being able to show up and do the job. So I tried to really focus on making sure we could show up and do the job. As long as I felt I was able to kind of do that, maybe I was able to give him the opportunity to settle in and be able to do his 10% of the job, which is, actually be out there for maybe 8 runs and compete with somebody. So that was really interesting for me to try to take on and do. And then it's kind of interesting to maybe have compare and contrast as to what were some of the things that we did that allowed you some of that time and space.
Well, I think having a good program, besides, Nate inherited a vehicle that still was someone else's project and someone else's idea, right? So it goes without saying that we want to have the vehicle operational and running, but the other thing, which was even more important, is the program, the team members, and, establishing the right team firstly, and then, finding a way that everyone can work together productively is difficult, right? And drifting's interesting. It attracts a certain type of individual right now, right? We're all a merry bunch of bandits for the most part. To get everyone to work together and work well, and also know that, hey, there is someone in charge, right? And at the end of the day, job number one is following what they say. And if you have input, let's share that input at the end of the day, right? This is kind of almost like, when you go to the military, establishing kind of the order and the way things are going to happen, and, you refine as you go, but there's certain fundamentals that we looked for early on. I would say extremely successful.
The guys that we got to show up and work for us. Luck, a huge part of it, but I would say no. We're pretty good in our individual lives prior to meeting and doing drifting, where we've had to perform at certain levels and be able to cut through some of the noise of what happens when you deal with general public. Also, when you start getting to this level, I feel like in this situation we were kind of primed to where we have something really really, really cool that you get to go do. There's only, 80 teams in the country that get to go do this at this level. And then if we could somehow get some people who have, the qualities we need to be able to lean on and not overstack any one skill, but then also have the drive to where these people operate, because it's inside of them to operate at a certain level. And we got very, very lucky this year with that. And I think setting the tone and the expectations, and then making sure that everybody had an idea of what a plan to success was. I think that's always key for a project to be actually seen and gone through, is to know, hey, this is what success looks like. We may have some things that come at us that might not appear to be just that, but if we do this and this, at the end of the day, I'll feel successful, and I feel that you guys can go home feeling successful, you did your job. And having those things lined out is huge when working on those things, and especially when you're working on something that, frankly, we're not curing cancer. None of this needs to happen. Like, it's all a goal and a personal drive of a challenge that we've picked for our individual levels.
Well, and I think for me, a big difference between last year and this year, look, problems are gonna happen, failures are gonna happen. It's a nature of automotive racing, it's a nature of competitive sports, but especially of drifting, right? There's guys that have millions and millions of dollars in budgets, and they've been doing this for 15 years. So do the math on how much R&D, Papadakis and all those other teams, and for us to be able to come in and learn everything and be able to apply all that, there's gonna be failure. But last year, I felt like it was just absolute chaos, and those major, test points kept happening to us that a well-oiled team couldn't solve. And this year, there was none of that chaos. I feel like we were a very well-oiled machine. Everyone did what they needed to do, and we performed very well on our team in every aspect. But we were dealt a bad hand as a result of, the prior year's program and the foundation that gave us. And we reacted very, very well. I mean, I wasn't even home, but Nate and the guys pulled in, well, I think Nate 90% of it on his own, but, put together the whole new engine setup for us. Magnuson stepped up to make sure we're making enough power, and all that happened in 30 days, which was, incredible.
That's from finding out. We just showed up. We just spent a bunch of money to show up. All the guys were ripping and roaring, we're ready to go. We did a bunch of work after Jersey. Then we show up to St. Louis, and we literally pull the car out of the trailer. No oil pressure. Now, how does that happen? You pull it in with oil pressure and you come out with nothing? Well, it gives you a billion options of how that could take place. And we also had the, hey, we're here, we need to do this. We just did all this work. We just licked our wounds from the last one. And now here we are with this. So it was a huge kick in the balls for myself. And I know the team, we're running around trying to get things done. And it is extremely difficult to think of everything. And then just to have us throw us for a loop. So we literally just drove away from there that night, loaded up. We had a lot of help from a lot of the teams around there. And they helped us find out that there was no shot of us making this round. And with everything that we'd done all year, with all the sacrifices and efforts that has been put forth for the previous years, not to mention this is our year. If we don't get back in by earning our way, we're not in. So we have 2 rounds down, we're losing one of them. So 25% of our points option are gone. I looked at my guys and they're so solid and committed to this process that I looked at them and said, hey, if we leave now, we can be back and have that motor pulled within a couple days and have some answers and some information, and we'll have a better shot of making it. So that's what we did. We loaded up, turned and burned, and halfway through changed the plan. Really everything that needed to fall into place did. We had Magnuson step up. We have had Ace Performance Automotive, who was one of my engine suppliers out of Arizona. They bent over backwards to do things, and even with that taking place, we still had to scramble, take parts of the 22 car, put it into the 24 car, and then make it happen, but we were able to do it. So actually, I mean, there's 2 points to this. He's left everything to other people prior, and with full expectation of showing up and having it done. We're the very next season again, everything on the line, nothing going the way that it should be. And here we find ourselves in that same position again. Let's fast forward to that. So here it is, the guys and I here for 30 days, doing anything and everything we can to try to get up there for you. What's it feel like for you to know that we're driving up there last minute, car you've never driven, setup you never have even set eyes on, and then we're gonna ask you to go into the fastest track that we run all year long, although they did change the course a little bit, so it's not as fast. How does that feel for you?
Well, yeah, the first time I ever drove the car was heading to the burnout pit in Utah, which, was one of the faster tracks, even with the changes in FD and overall a high-speed track throughout it. And what I told Nate was, I was like, look, if you can deliver me a car that works, I'll make it work, right? And I'll be able to drive it. And look, I'd driven with Boost before, right? In my first season, we had a Vortex supercharger setup. So I was like, I'm comfortable with Boost. And that Boost came on hard and it came on fast, right? So I had an expectation of what driving with Boost felt like, but it had been a year and a half, right? It was said essentially was a whole new powertrain setup. We were NA leading right up to that. I literally had never driven the car, put the new motor together. Magnuson supplied the blower. They got it tuned, raced out to Utah, met me out there, and it fired up right away. So that was a good sign. And I did my burnout in the burnout pit, and it felt great. So I was like, all right, this is good. And I remember when we took off from the line on my first practice run, I was blown away because it didn't even feel like there was a blower, if that makes sense. In the Vortec, I was so used to, just like, a slow wind up and then kind of getting hit and that carrying through, but kind of falling off on the upper end, where with the Magnuson, is almost like NA, right? The power is so linear, and when it was delivered, it was smooth throughout the power band, which, it was exciting, but not what I expected. I was like, oh my God, this feels like the NA car. Like there's not.
Yeah, except for a little bit more pep, right? A little bit more everything that you would hope in the NA.
Yeah.
It goes like a hockey stick. Power up and then consistent until you don't need any more.
Yeah, and what I meant, the power band was just like NA,
Yeah.
right? You don't feel that, but you have all that low end torque. And, with the Magnuson, all that torque's available, I think at, sub 3,000 or 3,500 RPM. So it was awesome because we were running, still underpowered for the field, right? We made 650 wheel in that range, which for all intents and purposes, that's 800 horsepower. It's a lot of power. But in a field where most of the guys are running 800 to 1,000, 1,200 horsepower, we were still the underdog, but I was blown away at how well it performed, but also the solution that we had been searching for, the powertrain, right? I had thrown money at high dollar NA motors, different setups, ITBs, no ITBs, did everything I was supposed to do to have a reliable setup, and it didn't pan out that way. And one of our initial ideas 3 years ago was, hey, let's keep it simple. Let's take a relatively stock LS and let's put a blower on it, right? And it's interesting that we end up in a better version of that same idea, right, with the Magnuson now. And the cool thing is, instead of spending 25, 35 grand on a motor, we can buy a crate LS from GM for 6 grand, 7 grand, right? Which we'll see how long it lasts. But man, even if I go through 1 or 2 of those a season, I'm still spending half as much as I was spending before. Magnuson's kind of opened up that possibility of having a reliable, high horsepower powertrain combination. And look, it's not something new, right? Rome runs a Magnuson.
I've been running them
Robert
for years.
Thorne. Yeah, there's a lot
The
of
whole field, all the successful teams out there are running some sort of combination of an LS with the Magnuson on it. There are some other blowers out there, but the field of the consistent guys that are showing up with their farm tractors and just plowing fields all day long and just going up and being able to run, it's this combination.
Well, it's funny, sitting behind it could almost fit on our stock code. We have this crazy big cutout in here from what we were doing before, and you have the Magnuson in there, and you're like, that could fit under a stock hood, right? Talk about absolute sleeper. But then the sounds too. The sounds are so amazing. So amazing, the combination of that supercharger whine and the exhaust. I feel like we finally figured out a combination that works and a combination that we can build a program off of, and that's scalable.
Like, we were able to show up this season and not look like our heads were completely up our asses. They were, but we were able to appear as if they weren't. What's so exciting about this platform and the fact that we have the chassis and drivetrain solved, we might go an iron block LS or something like that. We might do something of that kind of sort, but moving away from this is not happening. What it allows us to do is all that other tweaking of the teams and of the guys and of the processes and of the checks and balances to make sure every time we show up, we're able to show up and impose ourselves onto the situation. We have that now, and that was huge. I knew this was gonna work. I knew this 3 years ago that this setup was gonna work, because you keep it simple and you show up and you wanna be able to outwork every other guy there next to you, and the best way to do that is be robust and don't go too high strung and make sure that everything can take the beating you're about to put onto it. So It did it. He held tight while we were here doing that. Stressful time. So walk us through some of the competition that day. As we go through competition, usually something takes us out, right? That wasn't happening. We had a belt slippage, which was only due to the fact that I had the wrong belt and the wrong paper, and we put a belt that was too long. But other than that, no belt issues. So as the day progressed, you were getting into new places where you hadn't been before. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we made it to top 16 against Nate Chen, and I'm pretty sure Nate is running a Papadakis car.
Okay,
right?
I wouldn't.
No,
know
not
about that.
Papadakis. Who's Nate's running a Kazuya? He's partnered with Kazuya, so whoever runs Kazuya's program. One of the big tuner, teams out there. But
A
anyways,
veteran team that's been doing things.
Yeah, definitely. We made it out of our top 32 bracket battle. The first day. I forget about who we went against Kelsey Rowland, I thing.
That was for seating, right?
Yeah, correct. And then top 32, we went against Nate Chen, and I'm pretty sure his car makes like 800, 850 wheels, so significantly more than ours. And it was amazing because, you know, with our setup, not only were we able to surge on him in the chase position, but in the lead, we created a very, very big gap, especially into that final zone, which inevitably, I think, got us the win against him. So yeah, we had never made it. We never had a consistency of program that even allowed me to drive to get to, you know, the fact that we could get into the top 16, which was, you know, it was good because it was a milestone for us. We hadn't done that yet. And then we faced Rudy in top 16, and, you know, we had a tire debeat on a very odd place, and we weren't running super low tire pressure. So it was kind of like a fluke thing. It debeated, sent me off track, and that was the end of the day. But, you know, I think one of the big things for me this year was to focus on having a good time and enjoying it, because I lost some of that the prior year. And even through the obstacles, ups and downs, you know, I think we all had a
What
really
I
good
thought was
time.
interesting during this process is we had all wandered into unfamiliar territory, is what happened. All of a sudden, we are sitting there, holy shit, we just made it through our top 32. All right, awesome, what's coming up next? And now here, for me and the team, the guys, we only are now, okay, we have 3 more battles we have to make it through in order to go all the way in this thing, which previously we're running to just try to get into this, into that. So as we're trying to now get in front of the next spots, I can kind of see a lot of us going, should we be more stressed? Should we be more worried? Should we, you know, it was just interesting to see that we had done our job, that the car was actually there, and that we were able to start moving into it. And I know that top 16, we got to go out and do the actual ceremony. We got your wife and baby to get to come out there, which was cool. And then to find out at the very, very end of it, you know, we're all just trying to just get through the next second. We're not worrying about anything other than what is right in front of us and the next second, to hopefully that we have the opportunity to get there. And we're done. We're at the end of the day, and we realize we made it in for next season. We earned our way back against all the odds. Everything that needed to happen over that last 30 days to 5 weeks happened and got us just one placement past not being able to run next year. So it was interesting for myself, and I know for everybody else, to sit there and go like, all right, we did it, guys. We did our thing. And then to realize we actually hit the ultimate goal. That was what we were hoping for, but we weren't going to put that pressure on us. We were just trying to get the job done, proof concept, and then to actually have that done. So how was that for you? Because I know you didn't realize it either. We're sitting there wondering, all of a sudden someone comes back in.
We didn't realize it, I think, until a couple days later. Yeah, I mean, it was just that much sweeter of an experience.
Yeah. So we have it. Basically, guys, it was impossible, and we did it. Not impossible, but very unlikely. It takes a ton of everything to have the balls to continue doing it. So as you guys saw, that was rough. Yeah, that's the season. Like Richard talked about, I inherited some of the program that had a ton of effort, a ton of money, and a ton of thought put into it, and it hadn't had a ton of worked through it to find out whether or not it would actually work or not. So we spent a lot of time, and this being my first season in this position, I've taken on all sorts of tasks. There's nothing I won't try or do, and most of them I'll succeed at doing. But to have what we started with, also the amount of resources, the amount of patience, the amount of time I knew that was going to be allocated to this, given how rough the last couple seasons have been, I had some apprehensions as to how smooth I was going to actually be able to figure out, decipher what the problems were going to be, where we're going to need to have those things shored up, who is going to be able to do those, and then am I going to be able to keep the team motivated? A lot of times for me, that's the most difficult thing. I go full mission orientated, and your feelings and everything else about that doesn't matter to me usually, and that's not always the best way to get a team to follow you. So a big thing for me this year was that I'm working with high quality guys, and I'm going to have to be a high quality leader to be able to get them to do what I know is necessary to get through this job. A key shout out to those guys. Best people on the planet. They're cut from the best cloth. Neither one of them needed to be here for the money. The fact that I was able to get that type of quality of commitment, as well as being supported in ways that I've never been supported, having grade A people show up and take full ownership of their job, and then being able to maintain that culture to the point of where we were able to attract other guys of that same caliber to want to be on our team for the next coming years. Huge for me. I am gonna do this. It's, you know, you can see me tearing up. There's a lot of pressure, and I love pressure, and I'm just proud that I was able to step it up and actually get it done with all of the things it takes. Being autistic, that's difficult for communicating with people, and you know, finally found myself in a position where people were able to see my skills beyond some of the inconveniences for dealing with me, and like, you know, huge. So that's it. That's the season. The next season, we don't know what's gonna happen, but for now, I'm happy with this.